Hello and welcome. Today we've got Chad Stewart, who is an award-winning author for Britfield, and we'll be discussing all the latest updates and California. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Telegram channel and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And I'll also be leaving Chad Stewart's details as well below so you could follow him. And if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave the link below in the description for the full interview. If we choose our words wisely, of course, due to the censorship that's happening right now. Chad, thank you for joining me. And where do we begin?
Yeah. And it's great to be back. And thank you. And I just enjoyed your show so much, Nicholas. And as I said earlier, people from across the nation have been getting back to me that have seen your show, and even friends or people that I know in media or film, and they watched your show and are watching your show. So it's really cool. So I'm talking to you live. It's about 8 a.m. this morning in Thursday in San Diego, California. So it's interesting because they always say where California goes, so does the rest of the state. And I think it's hard too, because so much of what people are seeing right now is flashover substance, or the mainstream media's narrative, as we all know. And I think it's a very dangerous type of thing. And I think a lot of people in California are awake, set aside from the nation. And it's interesting that California is a red state and did go red with this last time that we had in November. And so really what it is, it's just a very powerful juggernaut, I guess you could say, with Hollywood and with Silicon Valley. And I've always kind of said that the farther north you go, the more liberal it becomes. But people are woken up here, and they're excited. And we have a lot of amazing patriots in the nation. And I believe that the actual results were about 100 million to about 35 to 40 million. Those are the real numbers statistically. So it was the greatest landslide in the history of our country, which is exciting. I think we're waiting for the big man to come back. And I think it's going to be August from some of the things that we're seeing. And I do think that a lot of this stuff it takes time. And I think, like so many of us, we felt a bit burned, and It didn't go the way we wanted it to. And but I think we've learned a lot. And I think in the last year, and let's be honest, that we have never had more of an awakening with people starting to challenge things, understanding things, and for the first time questioning things. And that's never happened in the history, especially of the United States. And so I think that is an amazing time. And so we could go as deep as you want. We can talk about the real news and the truth, but I tend to like to keep it on a more upbeat on some of the things that are happening, succeeding. And I do want to tell your audience too that things are happening all over, not just the nation, but the world, just from people that I'm connected with. And I'll catch it just in a conversation. It's like they're doing this extraordinary work over here, or they're attacking this and they're reversing this, or they're on this missionary thing to here. And it's just hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the nation. I mean, what's happening in the UK is amazing. And I was watching some of those videos, and enough is enough. And you wouldn't have seen that a year ago or 2 years ago. And so it's the line has been drawn now, and I think it's exciting. So I think that's kind of a quick up view. And this, for people that don't know who I am, I'm an award-winning best-selling author. I started this journey about 10 years ago for this series called Britfield and the Lost Crown. And it was my way, it was my contribution to do something, my calling. And I think we all have that. And I think it's really a great time for all of us. It's great to follow the real news, but it's time to get back to work. It's time to get back to do what you've been called to do. And whether that's a teacher, then teach those kids to your best ability. Whether it's a parent, raise those kids to your best ability. Whether it's a commentary like yourself, get your show and go global. Whatever it is, whether whether you're a restaurant, owner, or you want to start something, it's just time to get back to work.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
So when you say, when you say that, great things are happening in the UK, could you give me an example of what you mean by that?
Yeah, and it was just you would know better than anyone. And I know that on the surface, it's crazy. And at first there was the passport, and then it was gone, and it looks like it's back. And again, too, you have to understand with the enemy, they will carry on until they're physically removed, and they will need to be physically removed. But they will never stop. It's not like you get them out of office and then they'll go on to something else, and we see that all the time. It's just it's a game of shifting from here to here. They're released, or they step down from this, and all of a sudden they're CEO over there, or they're running this program over there, and so. But it was just from what I was seeing in the streets of throughout UK, like I think 1 million people. Wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think more maybe. Yeah, and
I would say it was more than a million. It was probably 2 or 3 million. And with that said, I think the support of millions was behind them too, just because some of them didn't physically get out and walk the streets. I've never seen anything like that. It was amazing, and we're seeing that across the world. And I know if people don't know where to look, they're not going to see it. Don't ever watch the mainstream news. Just turn it off. Don't watch it for 5 minutes. Don't watch it for 3 minutes. It's all designed. Really, it's designed for two things. Number one is to provoke anger, and number two, to provoke fear. And to misguide you. It's a complete propaganda machine. They're incapable. Their business model is lies. And if they're covering a story, they own it. Just remember that if they're covering it, they own it. But shows like yours, like Mel K, she's fantastic. She digs deep. I love Sean at SG Report. He's got a great sort of balance and commentary. Challenges a lot of things, which I like. The Hagman Report is really good out of Pennsylvania. They've been in the game for 2 decades. And so there's some really good shows and programs out there, but you don't need a lot, and it's hard to find the right ones and stuff. And with that said, too, you've got to use discernment, and I use discernment all the time. And I don't necessarily agree with everybody that I watch all the time, but I like them, and I know that they're always. I think with education and learning, we're always learning, and just use your senses and use discernment. I think like Dr. Ted Brower, he's out of Florida. He's phenomenal. If you want to know anything about health and organics, and he's been in the game for 30 years, and his show's fantastic. And I don't agree with everything he's saying, but he's great, and that's where I get all my supplements and things like that. So there's just a really good balance, but it takes time. And as I was saying earlier, I've been in the game, or I've been waking up for 12 years, and so I like to say that for 12 years I've been relearning history, and I'm still relearning it, and I still have that reaction that so many people have, that it's like, oh, come on, really? You know what I mean? Or I'll hear some truth that's revealed, and I'm like, no. And even with everything I know, I'm still challenging it, because that's, from kindergarten on, we've just been programmed a certain way. And we'll talk a little bit about education, and can kind of shift in there. And we could also talk a little bit about where we are with the Britfield movement. What people need to know is, this is over a decade's worth of my time. I was born in Newport Beach, California. I was back east for 16 years in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and which is like a whole nother world. So I've been in New England. That was very interesting, and lived in England for a couple of years, and traveled most of the world. So I've seen a lot and have read a lot. And it was really about 10 years ago over 10 years ago that I got the idea for this first Britfield book. And since then, it's just been a wild ride. And now this is going to be taking the next, 15, 20 years of my life. It's 7 books and 7 movies. So we can talk a little bit about, updates on that. I'd love to talk just a little bit about education, and then we could get into film and media, but feel free to ask me any questions at all about anything. So.
Absolutely. Let's speak about, Britfield, where you are with it, and,
Sure.
Where you want to go with it.
Yeah, it was interesting. Someone was asking me, I think it might've been you, what's been the resistance towards it? And I think there's always just a natural resistance with anything that we want to do, unless you're part of the club. And as we said before, about 96% of all the film, media, and publishing and news are owned by 5 corporations that are all controlled by the same people. So that's difficult. So whether you want to publish a book or do a film, or even if you're an actor or whatever it is, it's all controlled. And as Mel K has said many times, you're in the industry, and you can go only so far, and you'll hit that glass ceiling unless you're compromised, or you're part of a bloodline, or you're part of a family. And you see that sort of tradition in films like with the Barrymores, et cetera. They carry on that legacy and stuff. But it's really been amazing. And I think we're at a point now, too, that the internet has definitely worked against the enemy that was hoping to use it as control. And I say that we're able to get the message out. Everything is changing. All models are changing right now. Publishing models are changing. Film models are changing. Most of anything that Hollywood is now doing is coming out of the independent market, independent films. 10 years ago, that was unheard of. That little 2 or 3 million, and every now and then you'd get kind of a zinger. These kind of self-financed movies, and now that's really the go-to, and that's changed. The technology in film has changed. But so with us in Britfield, it's been amazing. We started a national tour about 18 months ago, and I ended up now traveling to 23 states, 180 schools, and have presented in front of 35 or 40,000 students. And I say that's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, we've reached thousands of students. And I come in there with the truth, right? I talk a little bit about Britfield and having an idea, but I also tell how long it took me. It took me from concept to finally launching the book in August of 2019, 10 years. And I say that anything of quality takes time. It takes practice. I've said it on your show before. The difference between a hobby and a profession is about 8 to 10,000 hours. And I'm telling that to 10, 11, 12-year-olds. And so I'm letting them know about the truth, but I'm also saying that they're all born creative. They all have great gifts. Sometimes it takes a while to find that gift. If you have a great idea, it may take you 3, 5, 10 years before you realize that idea. And I said it took me over a decade from having a concept to having a lot of hard work and patience and disappointment and failure to finally launching the first book in a 7-book series. And so we're making impact, and across the nation. We've got just the feedback from teachers. I mean, you could always go to our website, Britfield.com, and look under tour, and you could see some of the pictures in classrooms, in libraries, in auditoriums of 400 people, and look at just countless comments from teachers. My favorite comment is that Mr. Stewart is inspiring the next generation of readers. And so I say all this not to give myself accolades, but I'm saying, who am I? I'm just a person that had an idea and that worked really hard, and we are making impact. And I think everybody has the ability to make impact. You're making impact. Mel Kay's making impact. Charlie in Spain, right? I think he just had a birthday. He's making amazing impact, almost kind of coming out of retirement. And it really doesn't matter how young or old you are. And I'll tell you this, it's very interesting. Kids are amazing. But I went to a school up north, and it was just great and had a lot of fun there. This is when we were traveling. And the mother came back and said, my daughter just bought book 2, I think it was, because we're sending it out to some of our fans. And she goes, oh, they loved it. She goes, my daughter, who is 11 years old, and her brother, Adam, who's 7, have their own podcast, their own little YouTube. And she said, would you mind if she interviewed you? And I thought, fantastic. I mean, here's an 11-year-old and she actually has, I think 1,300 subscribers. I mean, not bad, right? And it went on her show, and it was fantastic. And it was like for 10 or 15 minutes. And then it was kind of funny because she goes, that's all the questions I have, But I'm just saying, it's like, I mean, amazing what kids can do, and even adults. And you're never too old to become what you could have been. And it's really important. And some of you might feel really, really discouraged right now, and I totally get it. Whether you're 40, 50, 60, or 70. I got a feedback from someone that read Britfield Lost Crown, and they were 80 years old, and said, I know that I'm not a kid, but I absolutely love the book. But we're seeing people do amazing things, and I just think it's time to roll up your sleeves, get back to work, and do what you were called, because we all have gifts. We all have creativity. So no, it's been amazing. And we're just wrapped up our virtual tour, which is incredible. That's been a game changer for us. I don't think I'll be taking the road again. And we're moving in this summer. We're going to start positioning ourselves. We're going to be now we're going global with it, and we're going to be going into Canada. That'll be very interesting to see what's happening in Canada, our northern neighbor. God bless you guys. And then England. We have something scheduled for fall. I mentioned that last time, and so we're going to be rolling out through England. And then in July, we'll be moving Britfield into India, and that'll be very interesting. In Australia. And then Germany. So really next semester is really we go global with our tour. I'd love to get back on the road and travel to Eastern Europe and Europe. I'd love to come to England again, but that will take some time. So that's happening. That virtual author visit or the school tour, we're really trying to bring creativity back into the classroom, is going extremely well. And honestly, last semester it was a bit wobbly as we had this major crisis, and we can kind of transition into education. But this semester has been great, and we're already booking up for the fall semester. So that's great. And then we can also talk about the film. And I mentioned last time too, there's a retailer that we're doing a partnership with. So we will soon be in about 50 to 55,000 schools throughout the U.S. That's about half of them. And again, too, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Thank you. You did mention that. Do you just want to recap again on the information or, the story of the book as well, please?
Well, okay. It started as an idea 10 years ago. And that's how I always do it with the school presentations, is I talk about the power of an idea. We all have that instinct, and sometimes we have the right idea. It's just not the right timing. And you do everything you can with what you have, with where you're at, and you just keep moving it. And so it started over 10 years ago. I was at this really boring seminar for Morgan Stanley in Providence, Rhode Island on the weekend. And I started to drift, and I started to doodle, and I just doodled a simple circle, 3 lines, a basket, a boy and a girl. And I wrote The Boy and the Balloon. And that's how this whole thing started. And I just, for some reason, I saw this wonderful story. And at the time, I was doing nonfiction books. I had a thing with Pelican Publishing, and I had this whole series. But it was so boring and dry, and I'm so tired of it. And I wanted to come back to the world of creativity. And I said, why don't I just sit down, have fun with this book? I had no idea how long it was going to take me. Book one took me 4 years and 2,500 hours to write. So again, a lot of time. Book two took me 5 years and 3,000 hours. This is Britfield and the Rise of the Lion, and we're launching that July 4th. Very cool. So we're excited about that. So I just started to write it, and book one ended up to be about 384 pages. And what's so great about it is I just trusted the story. I wasn't going for page count. Book two is 474 pages. And then I'm just almost done with book three, which will launch next year. Takes place in Italy, and that's going to be about 525 pages. Again, when I started it last May, I'm like, I'm just going to outline the story and write it. I was thinking I'd come in around 350 or 400 pages. But this one's a big one. But it's really, really exciting. And they're very, very different stories. I think what's really interesting about the Britfield series for your audience is they would really, really love it. And it's not just for kids or children. I actually think it's harder to write young adult stories than adult stories. So sometimes when you sit there and say, oh, I've written a young adult novel, it's like it's easier. No, it's actually harder. And all the skill of writing and storytelling is there. They're all based on the 3-act structure. But it's really a book on truth. And it really wakes up the audience. And so you'd really, really enjoy it. And half our reading audience are adults. But I'll say with Britfield and the Rise of the Lion, this knocks it out of the park. I mean, you want a red pill book? This is it. And it's funny because someone from Mel K, I did an interview on Mel K's show a couple months ago. And she has a great audience too, just like yours. And someone had purchased it. And it was so funny. She got back to me. She emailed me just through info.com. And she said, like, wow, she goes, I just started waking up like in the last couple of years, as so many people have. But you know, like you tell your friends, your neighbors, and they think you're crazy. And she goes, I read your book. And she's like, wow. She's like, because I didn't hold back on it. And again, too, it's written in that fictional genre, but it's all based on truth. And so I'm trying to help to wake up the youth as much as adults. And I'm doing that with my stories. But really, at the end of the day, Britfield's based on family, friendship, loyalty, and courage. And what's great about these books is that they're based in reality, and not sort of heightened fiction or fantasy or witchcraft or all this other, basically, I would call crap. You know, vampires, good versus bad. Well, there really aren't any good vampires, good witches versus bad witches. There really aren't any good witches. So it's just, it's a fresh book. It's based on family, creativity, and history. And as you're reading it, as the kids are reading it, they're going to learn about geography, history, architecture, art, culture in each different country. So that's kind of a recap, but it is a huge mission. But the funny thing is there's a 70 to 80% gap in the market for these type of stories. And what do I mean by those types of stories? Stories based on family values in current time that isn't heightened fantasy or isn't an agenda-driven book.
Yeah.
And that's how the enemy works. And I was just going to say this in closing, is that the enemy cannot fulfill that gap. And so it's there for the taking. And I say that to anyone that's inspired to write good books or to do great films. Knock it out of the park and do a great family-based film. Family friendly. I mean, it can be action-packed. It can be action-adventure. It doesn't have to be The Blind Side. But there's a huge market out there that the enemy will never fill because they can't, because it goes against their agenda. Go ahead.
It sounds great what you're doing, because the way I see how we are moving into the free world, into this new era of the golden age or the age of Aquarius, is that we'll be writing books like what you said, where there's a very big market, where it's to do with the truth and family values. And I think moving forward, it would be the new thing that it has, when we create movies, books, cartoons for children, it should be educational and truth.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that what you just said, based on educational, based on truth, and based on family values. And I'm saying that if you've been thinking about it, or you've been wanting to do something, get into the game and do it. And there's a huge there's a massive audience out there. And for us, that's why we've been so successful with the school tour. And again, too, it's like I have a team that's rolling it out. We're contacting over hundreds of thousands of teachers across the nation. It does take time. It does take a lot of work, but we've been in every school imaginable, from public schools. We've cracked that nut to private schools, to Catholic, to Christian, to homeschool, to you name it. little by little, one by one, and we're coming in, and they love it because it's like trust me, they're desperate for good material. They're desperate for something refreshing. They're desperate. I mean, Brickfield and Lost Crown is being taught in schools across the nation now, and I mentioned that on your show last week. But we had just one school in Florida that we did a couple of months ago, and they've just purchased flat out, 55 hardcover books to be taught this semester in this school. And I just love that, because when Brickfield comes in, guess what? One of those other crap books go out. And I'm talking about the agenda riddled type of stories that have been there. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm just one person. I'm nobody in some ways. But I had a calling, and I trusted that, and it was not easy. And nothing of quality is easy. It never will be easy, and it will take you years or decades, but it's worth it. And it's the journey. And it's like, you have a choice. You choose right or you choose wrong, and right is always going to be harder, but it's worth it. And you could sleep at night. So.
Absolutely. So let's discuss more about California and what's happening with those, the public. How have you been speaking to them when you go to the supermarkets or you go outside and you go to the shops? What's the situation or the behavior with the public?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and it's interesting too, because and I feel for all the restaurant owners or the small mom and pop shops and stuff, and we have the big conglomerates that are really dictating it, such as Whole Foods. And I knew when Amazon bought Whole Foods, it was game over. I've always loved Whole Foods. It's expensive, but it's fun, and I don't mind spending for organics. But again, too, most of it's not labeled now. But it shocked me. And I can go back a year ago, but I was surprised. I live in a nice area and in a very affluent area. And these are like, multimillionaires. These are CEOs of companies. And I was watching them, embrace this quote unquote thing that we're going through right now. Mm-hmm. And wearing the thing and walking their dog or driving in the car or jogging. And I honestly, I was blown away. Now I am seeing it starting to dissipate. I am seeing a lot of people waking up, but you guys just be patient. And I know it stinks, but I am seeing it change. I am seeing a massive change. Some things have been happening, like up in Huntington Beach in Southern California, with protests or people just going to the beach without wearing their thing. And, so it's, I am seeing it. I'm seeing people. It's amazing, because I think once people wake up, they're ticked and they're on fire. And that's happening at a rate right now that has never been said. And like I said at the beginning of the show, think what's happened in the last year, and as devastating it is, you have millions upon millions upon millions of people that are now awake that frankly never would have been awake. And we could kind of transition into education just for a couple minutes, but think where parents are today with their kids, and millions of parents for the first time ever, this has happened over the last 12 months, are realizing how defunct the educational system is, especially on the public side, what they're teaching at these schools, which is horrifying, how far behind the students are, or this whole Common Core garbage. And what do you mean this is the way that you're solving mathematical problems? Or, you're approaching this. And so millions of parents for the first time are awakened. And here's a stat for you: 20 to 30% of all students when schools are open will not be returning. That's a revolution. That's an educational revolution. And I like to say that it's right now we're in an educational reformation. And this is huge.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's a very good point you made, that the education system, which is part of obviously the system, the system that we can't really say because of this, but their agenda, the system that's not good. It's falling apart. It is. And it's huge. I already know lots of people who are not sending their children to schools.
No, and it's interesting. And I might have mentioned this before, but I remember I was on my tour, and we were going through schools, and it was last March 2020, and I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and I just did 4 schools back to back, and I was going to continue through Tennessee and up through Kentucky, and I couldn't wait because I really wanted to get to that Midwest and Chicago, Ohio, New England. And when this whole thing happened, and all of a sudden school started closing, and I thought, oh, great. And so I had to drive all the way back, and that's a long journey to California or San Diego. But I was saying to my friends at the time, my colleagues, because we're all involved in the research of this. We also have the Brickfield Institute, which is really dedicated to the research of education and creativity. I said, how many students do you think will be going back when the schools finally open in full? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, well based on those 3 things on the models, first time ever, Parents will be learning what their kids are being taught at school and be horrified. That'll be a shocker. Number two, how far behind they are. Number three, you can spend 3 or 4 hours at home with the homework and be done and have the rest of the day to, I don't know, play, have some fun, pursue something that you want to do, hang out with your friends, do whatever you want to do, that you don't need these 8-hour institutions. And I said, what will it be? 5%, 10%? Because when you're talking 5 or 10%, you're talking about millions of students that won't be going back to the public schools. Therefore, you're talking about the funding being shut down and dried up. And that is a major educational revolution. Some of them are saying it's as high as 30 to 40%. We've seen the homeschool market go from 2.5 to 5 to 10 million people nationwide. That's huge. It's doubled and will probably triple. And the homeschool market doesn't have that stigma that it used to. And there's a great respect for the homeschoolers now. And I have said this before, that I honestly find homeschooled children to be the best educated children I've ever met. And trust me, I've met thousands of them. And they're well-rounded. They seem a lot more grounded. They listen and they ask a lot of great questions, and they're not afraid to ask questions. Whereas I think, in the public schools and even private schools, it's stigmatized. And there is only one right answer. And this is the way we do it. And everything is geared towards testing. And so really what you're dealing with is not a damaged model, not just in the United States, but especially in the UK and other countries. It's an obsolete model. And like I say, the education model is like selling 8-track players right now. It's so outdated. It was founded in the 1800s, starting in Britain, to meet the Industrial Revolution. And it's based on the industrial model. It's based on a factory model. You have your bells, you have your whistles. The greatest idea that they put you in classes is because you're all 12 years old. I mean, what does that have to do with anything? And it's really that institution. And it's like that 8 to 3 o'clock, Monday through Friday. And it's the subjects they teach. And so that's why we're so desperately trying to bring creativity back in the classroom. Do you remember when you were young, maybe in first or second grade, and how much fun recess was, or playing, or art, or maybe you took some musical instruments? And it doesn't mean that you're going to play the violin or the piano for the rest of your life, but it was really fun. And you remember that? Or were you doing the plays, the theater plays, or maybe you're just back in the back working the sets, or you were one of the actors. And it was just amazing. And all that stuff, the older you get, gets kicked out. And everything is geared towards the test, and everything is geared towards mathematics and science. And these are the important subjects. And yes, they're a great balance, but they're not important. And mathematics is not important. I think basic math is great. I said this before, but I was in banking, finance, and architecture. I had a huge development company in New England for over 10 years. And I didn't need anything more than basic math. I mean, everything is done through the computer and software programs and stuff. And so I'm not knocking math, but to sit there and carry it on year after year after year, instead of bringing in music or art or any of these other creative classes, is so important. So
I think there is a small percentage that is useful when you're at school and you're learning. But again,
yes.
that's how they work. They give you 99. Kimberly Palm says they will give you 99 truths to sneak in a lie.
That's very true.
And that's what happens. But I think the biggest concept, the biggest bad thing about the education system is that you wear the same thing every day. You everything's a repetition. A bit like prison.
Yes.
And they don't teach you stuff like being positive or taxes or manifestation. They don't teach you any of that. Everything is material stuff. Very interesting. And religion.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I'll just read some stats because it's good to get it out there. But we are, as a nation and also globally, in a creativity crisis, and this has been happening for over the last 20 years. And what do I mean by that? I mean in 10 specific areas, starting in the 90s, creativity scores have been going down every single year for 20 years. And so here's some interesting stats that 5-year-olds that are tested, and this was a huge research project done by George Land, and he worked with NASA, created this creativity program because he was testing the astronauts, because it's like, while mathematics and engineering and all the analytical stuff was important, they also needed to be very, very creative, think outside the box, be able to approach problems from a different way. He adopted that test and started teaching children, and he followed them for 20 years, and he noticed that 5-year-olds were scoring at 98% creativity, basically geniuses, off the chart. And I think most children are geniuses. I think they're amazing. they're creative. And I think it's the system that takes that away. It kills creativity. Tested them again at 10 years old. And so they went from 98% down to 30%. Tested them again at 15 and they were at 10% in creativity scores across the board. Since the 1990s, schools have killed curiosity and passions, narrowed visions, lowered expectations, stifled risk-taking, destroyed collaboration, narrowed minds, killed deep thoughts and imagination, forced conformity, and solidified hierarchy. And as a result, children are less emotionally expressive, less energetic, less humorous, less imaginative, less talkative and verbally expressive, less uncontroversial, less lively and passionate, less perceptive, and less likely to see things from a different angle. And so I say all of this because you sit there and say, whatever, I'm already educated. Well, more than likely your kids are being educated or your grandkids. And so everything I'm talking about is the importance of getting creativity back into the schools, but also back in your home front and doing fun things and taking vacations. And you don't have to have a lot of money or even much money to be well educated or well rounded, and to pursue things and stuff. So, anyway, so it's amazing, and this has all been a concerted effort over the last 2 to 3 decades, and but people are starting to wake up, and so a lot of what we're trying to do with Britfield, this is our contribution. That's why we're bringing creativity. Do you realize that we've sparked the minds of thousands of students across the nation? And trust me, kids have an amazing, especially at that age, they have an amazing ability to discern truth from fiction. And when they hear something that's real, and when you're up there presenting it to because you care, they absorb that. And so we'll just keep going. And right now we're influencing thousands. In the next couple of years, we will be impacting millions of kids in schools across the nation. So
absolutely. It's a wonderful job you're doing, Chad. Is there any way that you could send me the link and I can leave it below in the description so that people can buy your book and have a read?
Yeah, I would definitely, if you're interested in the book, just go to Britfield.com. So BRIT, FIELD, Britfield.com. Check out the BritfieldInstitute.org. We have a lot of stats and statistics there. So
excellent. Well, Chad, thank you very, very much for your time. It's been absolutely amazing. Is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners before we finish?
No, just you have a great audience, Nicholas, and I think what you're doing is amazing. You're a wonderful interviewer, and there's just some great shows out there. We are doing a writing workshop June 21st through the 25th. So if you're interested in writing your story, join it. You can check it out on our blog. It's at Britfield.com on our blog. We have the information there. So it's gonna be pretty cool. We did it last summer. We had people from not only all over the nation in the US, but we had people from all over the world. We had someone from South America. So it was really cool. A lot of fun.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you and God bless. And we'll speak very soon. Bye-bye.
Yes. God bless. Godspeed, Nicholas.